Okay, everybody, welcome. This is the Edge of the Eternities full set review for draft. We are going to be mostly focusing on the commons and uncommons because that's where the draft format lives. I am Scuffle. I do mostly educational content, and I am very good at drafting and sealed. So I'm hoping that this is something that will help you with your sealed and early drafts. Today, just as a quick overview, this is our roadmap. We're going to cover first all of the mechanics. Those are going to be warp, station, and landers. Then we're going to go over the stats of the commons and uncommons in this set, what kills what you should be looking at. Then we're going to talk about all of the removal stats, then the general shape of the format. Then I will go over my review system. We use the Scuffle system here. And then usually I'll go straight into the cards, but we're going to talk about the archetypes along with the multicolored cards for this set because there's only 10 multicolored cards at uncommon in this whole set. And then we're going to begin our card by card review. So we are going to sort of blend into the card by card review. We're going to talk about the color pairs along with their signpost uncommons. So, the Edge of Eternities is really good. It feels like full magic. This is one of my favorite cards in the set. Sister Secundi Void Altar. It's just a land that comes in tap, but you can feed creatures into it with Station, which we'll talk about shortly, and turn it into something much scarier. This is going to be a very gameplay-oriented set. It's a little bit simpler than we've seen in the past, and that's in part because the mechanics are very complex. But it feels very modern, and not just because we're in space. It's really cool. So the mechanics, they're very complicated they're conceptually very complicated, but the cards that come out of them are very simple. So first thing there's 4 brand new mechanics, and the first one I want to talk about is landers. Landers are tokens. You can pay 2 and sacrifice them to go get a land, put in play tapped. It's just rampant growth after you make it. It's very strong. So that's worth a whole card. 2 mana getting a land is worth a card. So you'll usually have them attached to cards that aren't worth a whole card. 1 green, gain 2 life is pretty good. 1 green, gain 2 life is 3 mana to go get a land, put it into play tapped, but you can spread it out. It's very strong. Then there's warp. So warp is reverse. It's like an adventure in a way. So when you warp a card, you pay its warp cost. In the case of Starfield Shepherd, it's 5 mana for a 3/2 flying, but you can pay 2 mana to warp it. And if you warp a creature, it's only in play for that turn, and at the end step, you exile it into its own little zone, and then you can pay its mana cost later to cast it. So warp says it's a preview. You get to preview this creature. This creature is here now, and then we can cast it again later. And usually they've got pretty strong end of the battlefields effects. So like Starfield Shepherd is go get a basic plains or a creature card's mana value 1 or less, and then reveal it and put it into your hand. So spread out, this is a 7 mana 3/2 with flying that essentially draws 2 cards. The warp mechanic is really interesting. There's lots of ways to toy with it. There's some ways to give your creatures haste. There's ways to get extra value out of them. They're all very interesting. I like warp a lot. And then finally, the other new mechanic is Void. Void is like Descend. It's just if a non-land permanent left the battlefield this turn or a spell was warped. So non-land permanent or warp. So if a creature dies, if you sacrifice something, or if you warp something, and that's it's just a little bit preemptive because the warp spells still leave the battlefield, but if I warp it, I know it's going to leave the play, so Void kicks in. And Void is a fairly straightforward mechanic. Just if you trigger it, you get something. In this case, the Roving Actuator is a 4 mana 3/4. That's pretty bad, but a 4 mana 3/4 Void, you get to cast an instant or sorcery from your graveyard with mana value 2 or less, and that's pretty strong. And then the last new mechanic is Station. This is a kind of controversial one, but it's getting its own slide because it's important. I like it, I think, more than most other content creators. So, Station comes along with a new card type called Spacecraft. All the spacecraft are artifacts. All the spacecraft have flying. Most of all of the non-rare cards with Station are spacecraft, and there's some rares like we saw earlier that are not spacecraft, but they do have Station. Right, you can station spacecraft or planets. So what happens with Station is I can take if I have a Station card, I can say I'm sending my 4/4 to station this galvanizing saw ship. I tap it, and then I put 4 charge counters onto the saw ship. You can put charge counters on in other ways, and once they have it, you can proliferate. But it's a little bit like crewing, but it's more permanent. You need to establish a presence on that station. Like Deep Space Nine is not a real spacecraft until you have the life presence there, until you can captain it and crew it. It's a really cool mechanic. It's a little weak on the surface for limited, but this galvanizing saw ship, it's a 6 mana 6/5 flying haste, and you have but station 3+. So it is actually nothing until you can station it, until you can tap total power 3 creatures to put 3 charge counters on the saw ship. You can do that with 1 creature that's a 1/1, tap it 3 times over 3 turns. You can do it with a 3 power creature, you can do it with a 10 power creature, and you'll just overshoot it. Galvanizing saw ship plays just like a vehicle. So it's a 6 mana 6/5 flying haste, crew 3 is another way to think about it. But when you crew it, it stays crewed. And that's really important for some of the stations that have much higher station costs. They'll have 8 or 10, and you'll have to crew it over multiple turns. So very generally, the stations are divided into 3 categories. They're the cards that need to be stationed or do nothing. Galvanizing saw ship does nothing if you don't station it. It makes it a little hard to work with. They're the cards that you don't really care if you station it or not. Like Fell Grab Ship says when it enters, you mill 3 cards, you return a creature or a spacecraft from your graveyard to your hand. If you care about milling, that's worth the 3 mana because having a permanent in play is something that's valuable. So this card is good enough without being able to station it. And then there's the cards that self-enable. So like Atmospheric Greenhouse, there's a few that make tokens, but Atmospheric Greenhouse grows your board. So if you have some creatures in play, you can play the greenhouse, grow everything, and then use those cards to station it. There's a real cost to stationing. It's not like we know how to evaluate vehicles, right? But when we first saw vehicles back in Kaladesh, we weren't really sure. And these are a little bit similar. If your station cost is low, if it's 3 or if it's 1, then it's just a creature. And if it's 8, it's not really creature unless you put conscious effort into making it a creature. So you need to know what kind of cost you're putting into your stations, but they do end up as consistently solid backup plans. So if I am a black deck with Fell Grab Ships in general, then I'm pretty happy just running the Fell Grab Ships. And then occasionally, if things are going right or if the board stalls out, I can put a bunch of creature capital into my Fell Grab Ship and get it into an attacking place. How many creatures it takes to station a given spacecraft matters a lot. So like Galvanizing Saw Ship, you can mostly treat it as a creature as long as you don't have more than 1, and you have some 3 power creatures, because it just turns into a creature so much of the time. But you don't actually get to treat the rest of these as creatures. If you need to treat them as creatures, you can build around doing that. But anything with a station cost of over 7, you're going to kind of have to cheat out. And there's a few really good ways to cheat stations. Warp is a really big one. You can warp a Starfield Shepherd for 2 mana, go get your card, and station for 3, and it'll kind of build up. No, I skipped too many slides. But it's not free. You have to evaluate your stations kind of separately. Rather than be an important core mechanic for this set, it's just another archetype. You think about it like an archetype. It's something that, oh, I have Fell Grab Ship or Atmospheric Greenhouse. I'm going wide. I can try and enable it. Or I just need a lot of artifacts. I'm happy with a 2-mana artifact that surveils, and I can put in a few 4-power things that station it later. There are really cool enablers for station. Like, I think they kind of nailed a lot of the enablers. There's a 1-mana 4/1 Defender. Love that thing. Like, a 1-mana 4/1 Defender means that this is a 2/2 flyer for 2 that surveils on ETB. Like, if this is a 2-mana 2/2 flyer surveil 2, it's a really good card. But that's a deck you have to build. You have to design that deck. I think it's a really cool mechanic. I think it's going to play well and pretty interestingly, but you have to be conscious of it. It's not like in Aether Drift, I would always say, you only have room for 3 vehicles. You can only run 3 vehicles. I think you only have room for 1 station if you are thinking about stationing it. or you can build a station deck, and that's something that's viable. So Theo says, I think they'll become creatures a lot of the time, more than people are early evaluating them. And Beard says that my suspicions so far are that a lot of these ships just aren't going to become creatures often. They become creatures when you need them to be when you want them to be creatures, but that's a cost that you have to pay. So if you have a deck built to pay that cost, then you get to make them creatures. This is not a fast format, but it's not a slow format. It's somewhere in the middle. You need to start developing your resources pretty early, but kills are going to be slow. And the thing about stations is every spacecraft has flying. Every single one. So they're all at least some degree of a finisher. Like a 5-mana 5/4 flying trample, put a creature +1/+1 count on each creature you control is very good, but you have to tap your board a lot of the time. Removal is good in this format. Like my main problem with stations, with spacecraft, is that sweepers are so good in this format. There's so many sweepers. I think that was a terrible design decision, because stations really want you to commit things to the board. But otherwise, it works well. All right, on to the stats. So, at common and uncommon, Edge of Eternities has 106 creatures, plus 4 that are basically creatures, they're equipment that make bodies. And then 12 spacecraft, I'm not counting those along with creatures unless I need to. Unless I build a deck that is intentionally doing that. There's 17 things with flying, 17 flying creatures, which is very low, but still more than Final Fantasy had, plus all the spacecraft. And then there's 6 reach creatures, which is the same amount as both Final Fantasy and Dragonstorm. There's 54 total artifacts, 8 combat tricks, which is pretty low, 7 pieces of recursion, which is... the recursion is weird, just ways to pick things up from your graveyard. There's 3 effective blinks, which is nice because of how many strong ET enter the battlefield effects there are. There's only 2 sources of self-mill in the whole set, but there's 9 ways you can surveil. And there's 4, actually I just found a 5th one, there are 5 anthems and they're good. All of the anthems, all the ways to pump your whole team are incredibly powerful. Overall, this might be the strongest set of anthems we've ever had. And there's only 3 pieces of colorless fixing in the whole set, but every single color can usually, that's a bad thing, because usually the colorless fixing, if it's high, you get to play lots of colors. If it's low, only green gets to play lots of colors, but the actual fixing is spread out because of landers. So even though there's only 3 cards, there's only 3 sources of colorless fixing, most colors can make landers. White is the worst at making landers, but even they can still make landers to get those missing colors. And that means that if you're splashing, it has to be an expensive cards. But there are 19 1 toughness creatures, 28 2 toughness creatures, 25 3 toughness creatures, 19 creatures with 4 toughness, 8 creatures with 5 toughness, 3 6 toughness creatures, and then only 1 7 toughness creature and 1 9 toughness creature. And that is commons and uncommons without the space stations. So of those, because of the toughness distribution, that means that the one spell that does, or there's no spells that, there's no pings, there's no deal 1 damage to anything, but if there were, and your 1/1 creatures will trade with 17% of the creatures in the set. The 4 different 2 damage removal spells will kill 43% of the creatures in the set. The 6 different 3 damage removal spells kill 65% of the creatures in the set. The 1 4 damage removal spell kills 83% of the creatures in the set. The 1 5 damage removal spell kills 90% of the creatures in the set. The 1 6 damage removal spells kills 93% of creatures in the set. And the 2 10 damage removal spells kill 100% of the creatures in the set. That seems like a lot, but there's a lot, mostly it's variable cards. There's a 2 damage that deals 3, there's a -2/-2 that deals 10. It is a weird, like, there's not as much as these numbers would make it seem. In addition to that, there's 5 unconditional removal spells. There's 3 conditional removal spells. So the unconditional kills everything. The conditional kills things like a creature with flying, a creature with power 4 or greater, tap creature, and so on. There is 1 creature that is a removal spell at uncommon. There is 1 edict, your opponent sacrifices the creature. There are 3 bites. There's 1 fight, so the bites deal damage equal to a creature's power to another creature, including 1 that has been eroded. There's a 3-mana green removal spell. It's target creature you control gets +1/+0 deals damage equal to its power to target creature an opponent controls. They forgot that you control, and it has been eroded. There are 3 rings, those exile something until they leave play, 2 auras, which disable a creature, but auras are usually pretty fragile. There are 7 sweepers. This includes the rares. That's absurd. That's the most sweepers we've had in any set, including core sets that were twice as large as this one. 7 sweepers fundamentally changes how you have to play the game. 7 is absurdly high. Aether Drift was a very sweeper-centric set, and that had 3. The most I've ever had in any set before that I've reviewed is 4, and we are at 7 sweepers, including uncommon, but most of them are rares. That's enough that you should know what they are. And I usually only talk about commons and uncommons here, but when 6 of the rares do a similar or the same thing, we have to talk about it. 6 rares will be seen more than any one uncommon. There's 1 tuck, 2 bounces, 2 taps. The stuns tap, they stun a thing or they just tap a thing down. There's 3 counter spells, 2 of which are pretty good. There's 2 disenchants that's destroy an artifact or enchantment, and that's fundamentally different from the 2 shatters, which destroy artifacts, which there are a lot of artifacts in the set, and there's a few enchantments, but they only matter. And we're going to be referring back to the sweepers a lot. I think this is a terrible idea. I think it makes the format a lot worse, and I'm annoyed that there's 7 sweepers. All right. So that brings us to the shape of the format. I know there's a lot of text here. There's a lot to talk about. I'm sorry. So overall, Edge of Eternities is a puzzle set. And what that means is the last set, Final Fantasy, that was a synergy set. And a synergy set means that you can choose a keyword. You can just look for the artifacts. You can just look for the ramp. You can look for the towns. A puzzle set is a lot like a synergy set, but this is a weird one for a puzzle set. You need to find the missing pieces. So like this Multicolored Zealot, 2 mana 2/2 or 2 mana 3/2, sacrifice another artifact or creature, surveil 1. Black, red, and black, white to a lesser extent really care about creatures coming into play and leaving play. They care about sacrificing. But this Multicolored Zealot is the only repeatable free sack outlet in the set. It's the only way you can sack your board to drain them out with blood artifacts or deal with your warp. So if I find myself in a red-black deck with lots of things that sacrifice, then I am now actively looking for my missing piece. That's what makes it a puzzle set. Unlike other puzzle sets, the puzzle alone isn't good enough. So the cards themselves are simple enough that you need raw power than missing pieces. So like I almost called it a Prince set. So like a Prince set is where power is above all else. Like you take the best card out of every pack period, and they kind of suck. You don't want to be playing a Prince set. We haven't had one in a while, MKM, but like. This is a puzzle set. You need to identify your missing pieces so you can pick them. Like you need to know your most important cards and then look for them. And if you can't find them, you don't get to do that thing. Like you have an incomplete puzzle. In general, there's a lot less archetype definition than usual. And payoffs are what's missing. So if you are the green white +1 counters deck, like that deck is solid, but there are very few ways to actually be rewarded for putting a +1 counter on all of your creatures. So if you see a payoff at rare or at mythic rare or the one uncommon one, you need to take it above everything else. This is a 2-color set, so it seems like it might be more, but the artifacts are excellent in this set. The colorless artifacts are excellent in this set, which makes it feasible and often correct to be a monocolored deck. Or a mostly 1-color deck. You can do a 2-color deck, but there's no early fixing. There's a lot of fixing, but it's all pretty late, and that's because of landers. So like, a lander token is good, but you can't rely on a lander token to get you your missing color, unless it's to cast a spell at 7 mana or greater. So this is a 1 or 2-color set. And then if you have an expensive card that I'm talking 6, 7, 8 mana that you want to play with, you can just put that card in regardless of colors. So like if a card costs 6 or more mana and has only a single color pip in it, we'll usually evaluate it as if it's colorless in this set, because you can play 1 planes and 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or 8 cards that generate landers and grab that 1 planes. You just can't you can't ever have white mana on turn 2. You can guarantee your 3rd color on turn 6, 7, or 8, but you can't. It's going to be incorrect to even build your deck to have your 3rd color before that time. There's going to be a lot of focus on gameplay. There's so many different decisions and different ways to spend your mana and different ways to warp. I'm like this use social engineering. I might not warp this if I'm worried about you holding a removal spell and I'm building around it. There's not a lot of real card advantage 2-for-1s. There's not a lot of ways to generate 2-for-1s because stuff like this Lithia Breaking, create a lander token is worth a card a lot of the time. So that lander token is the 2nd card in your 2-for-1. There's not as much there's no 3 mana draw 2 cards. So card selection is going to matter a lot, and you're eking out your little advantages. Gaining card advantages where you can is going to matter a lot. Warp is a really good example. And like, you can build a really good example is that Angel, the one with warp that goes to get a planes or a 1 mana value creature. Yeah, that's going to be worth 2 or 3 cards, but 2 of those cards are going to be a planes or a 1 mana spell. So can you pull enough value out of it? Or like this rescue skiff. So this is a 2-for-1 technically. It's 6 mana to pick up a target creature or enchantment card from your graveyard, put it directly into play. That can be good. Like 6 mana is a lot for that effect. Usually we'd pay 4, maybe 5 mana for that effect. But eventually it's a 5/6 flyer. Even with all the work that entails, you can eventually make that worth the 2nd card. Then the removal is good. Like, it is not as plentiful. Oh no, it is not as plentiful as Final Fantasy, but it does exist and is interesting. Like, there's a lot of like specific removal or removal that goes into specific decks, and there's a lot of powerful removal in general. Usually it'll be one or the other. All right, you can define payoffs differently in green decks, because one of the thing green does better than other colors is make lander tokens. So if you define payoffs as large, huge threat, it's a good. Then there are more. Hey Farquaad. All right, so that's the shape of the format. If you are coming back or need to refresh for your sealed, this is the section that I think is going to be the most valuable to you. And we're going to move on to the cards and the archetypes. So we use a scuffle review system. That is, I give everything a rating from 1 to 10, as well as a floor, ceiling, and effort value. So a 1 is a card you should never play. A 2 is a card you should try not to play. 3 is replaceable. You'll have them. Don't stress. A 4 is solid. It's fine, and your deck will consist of a lot of them. A 5 is a card that is strong. A 6 is a card you will always play in a given color or deck. A 7 is a card that pulls you into that color or deck. An 8 is a card you'll do extra work to play. Maybe you'll splash it. Maybe you'll change what your deck is doing a lot to make it fit. A 9 is a card, you're this color now. Your deck is different, your colors are different, what you're doing is different. A 10 is a card you will always play. They're very rare. They're usually artifacts, but not exclusive. In addition to a number that represents the average value, I also give everything a floor value. That's the worst a card will be. A ceiling value. That's the best a card will be. And then an amount of effort required to bridge that gap. Low, medium, high, or none. And that accounts for diminishing returns, specifics, sideboards, or maybe you need a lot of specific cards to go with it. In a puzzle set, you're a lot more likely to have higher effort values because you need specific things to make a card work. Your job as a drafter is both while you're drafting and while you're building, or in sealed just while you're building, you are trying to raise every card to that ceiling. You're trying to make it as strong as possible in your deck. You can even take the total value of all the cards in your deck, give your deck a score. I don't usually do that, but it can be fun. For Edge, we're starting here with the Edge of Eternities, multicolored commons and uncommons, and these are the archetypes as Wizards laid them out. We're going to talk about each one as we get to the card. So, usually I'll do all of the archetypes first, or talk about them first, but Edge of Eternities only has 10 multicolored cards total at common or uncommon, and they are the signposts. So, like, it's we get to talk about each archetype along with the card. We're going to review the card along with, like, as we discuss the archetype. So up first is green-white. So green-white in this set is +1/+1 counters. You boost your entire army with +1/+1 counters. Stack them up and watch the enemies fall. All right, so the signpost uncommon for this is Halia, Ascendant Cadet. It's 2 green, white, white, and when she enters or attacks, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. Whenever one or more creatures you control with +1/+1 counters on them deal combat damage to a player, draw a card. I'm gonna go ahead and raise the ceiling because I didn't read the attacks. So this is not a set where an attack is free. Your opponent is very likely to have blockers in play, and that's kind of the point. You want to... They designed this set with the intent of making you think through each of your attacks, and with the idea that each player is going to have creatures in play. If you can get one attack with Halia in, then it's suddenly worth it. She starts as a 4/4, goes to a 5/5. Once she's a 6/6, it gets hard to block. If you have other creatures, you can make them hard to block, but you'll need some removal. You got to put some work in. The +1/+1 counters theme as a whole doesn't really have payoffs. So there's not a lot of ways to turn... There's not a lot of ways to turn the fact that you put counters on your creatures into extra value, but Halia is one of them, and she's a good one. So the upside to Halia is if you have another creature in play, then on turn 5, you can play her, put a counter on something else, and when it hits, draw a card. She's also really good with flyers, which are not so common in green or even in white, but she's very good if you compare with some blue cards. I might end up splashing her in general. Overall, I gave her a 5 with a floor of a 4, a ceiling of a 7, and medium effort. You build around her, and she's really strong when she works. But if you're just casting a 5-drop, and then your opponent is just casting a 5-drop, then their 5-drop is going to be bigger than you, and you're not going to get that attack. Yeah, that's I agree with that, Carl. Carl says this will have a low win rate, but mostly because people fail to build and play correctly. One important thing you're going to be seeing a lot in this format is the archetype is not the end all. Like, you can be green-white without a counters theme. You can be blue-black without a control artifact theme. And you'll see this a lot. So don't lock yourself into a theme that's not going to work. Don't try to do the counters thing without Halia. If you take her first, I think she's a 7. But late in the draft, she's probably only going to be a 4. Unless you are already focusing on the counters thing. Like, there's not a lot of evasive creatures that have +1/+1 counters in white. If you have them, great, go for it. Alfariel, Dreaming Acolyte, 1 blue-black for a 2/3. When it enters, draw 2 cards, and then discard 2 cards or discard an artifact card. And during your turn, it has Death Touch. So this is bad Thirst for Knowledge attached. You really do want to be discarding an artifact card, but blue-black is artifact control. Assemble an artifact-based deck to grind out your opponent's resources turn by turn. It's nonsense. Like, you have a light artifact theme, you have control elements, just build your blue-black deck, try and keep the cards strong, and try and find the little pocket synergies. So there's not inherent artifact value in blue-black. There's a few cool things you can do, engines with blue, there's some ways you can recur your artifacts in black, but overall, this is a good card strategy. And Alfariel is a really interesting one. So early on, when you're likely to have more cards in hand, you're pretty happy just pitching an artifact. So a 3 and a 2/3, draw a card with some selection, very strong. Attacks pretty well because of the Death Touch, but late game, if you have to discard 2 lands, you're not going to be upset about that. If you draw 2 cards, pitch 2 lands for 2 real cards, you're very happy. So I gave it a 6 with a ceiling of a 6. The ceiling of a 6 assumes you have some artifact stack in your deck. You're not even an artifact deck. But a 3-mana 2/3 cantrip creature that punches through is just good. They say artifact control, but you have card selection and the ability to dig really deep for what you're missing. But you you don't need to do anything special. You need to put the good cards together because you have that extra card selection and card advantage. All right, blue-green ramp. You'll also notice that all of these archetypes, so Final Fantasy, the last set, was brilliant because the archetypes were all entirely new takes on existing archetypes. I loved it. I thought it was so clever. These are just old takes on old archetypes, but that's okay because the individual cards are interesting enough to justify that. The cards are complex enough to justify that. So, blue-green ramp explores Solera's furthest regions and worlds by controlling the largest monsters and ships in the system. Really, the payoffs here are abilities, but there's a few giant things you can do. So our signpost uncommon is Biomechan Engineer. I think this is the best uncommon in the set. I'm going to go ahead and raise the ceiling to an 8. I think it's the best uncommon in the set. It's a 2-mana 2/2, make a lander. So if you play this on turn 2, it's a 2/2 for 2 with value later. If you play this on turn 4, like, it's a Solemn Simulacrum. It's 4 mana, 2/2, go get a land. We know that's good. Even on turn 5 or 6, you get to double spell. You on both half, like, you play this and then a 3-drop, or you sack the lander and then a 3-drop. And then late in the game, once all your landers went off, when you have tons of mana, this does just win the game. Like, 8 mana, draw 2 cards, make a robot repeatable is so powerful. And there are enough landers that you might get to be able to, like, there are ways to activate this twice and it'll happen in a turn. Very, very powerful card. Blue-green as a whole doesn't really have a unifying factor other than these kinds of powerful mana sinks and payoffs in the late game. You really just want landers. It's kind of cool. I like blue-green in this set. Like, it's an interesting way to do ramp. I think it's clever. So I gave it a 7 with a floor of 5, a ceiling of 8, and low effort. It's usually going to be pretty easy for this card to do what you want, for you to first pick it. It's very strong. All right, so red, black, void. We talked about this very briefly. Not a lot of cards have void in general, but this one's really good. So it says use the void mechanic. It's just value. Like, it's red, black, sacrifice. You sacrifice things, and you do that to generate value. So Interceptor Mechan is 2 black red for a 2/2 with flying. It's an artifact creature robot, and when it enters, return target artifact or creature from your graveyard to your hand. That would be good enough in this set. That would be very strong. But at the beginning of your end step, if a non-land permanent left the battlefield this turn, or a spell was warped this turn, put a +1/+1 counter on it. So it's a 4 mana 2/2 Gravedigger. It's way better than Gravedigger, and it grows every turn on an evasive body. Really strong. I'm raising this one too. It's really good. I'll splash this card. There's very few cards I will splash in this set. But I'll pick up, like, there's just so many good things to pick up. It enables your synergies. There's an infinite combo we'll talk about later. You don't use this for that, but this is what I want in the infinite combo deck. I gave it a 7 with a floor of 6, ceiling of 7, and it's low effort. Overall, red-black is incredibly powerful as an archetype. Like, red as a whole is not so strong. Black as a whole is not so strong. Red-black together, it's very good. It just turns all of your little dinky bodies, all of your warps. You get so much extra value out of them. So as an archetype, red and black get the most out of each other. This includes landers. Like, you can crack a lander and trigger void. Menin. Is that how I say it? Menin. Blue-red artifacts. It's a... So, Menin. I had to spend enough time on the M's. Is very good. So, if we just break it down by the vanilla test, a 3 mana 1/3 flyer is bad, but a 3 mana 2/4 flyer is great. And this has the potential to be a 3 mana 10 power flyer spread out as you need it. It's very good. So Menin is a 1 blue-red jellyfish advisor. It's legendary. And whenever an artifact you control enters, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature that includes itself. Very strong. You want a lot of artifacts. There are a lot of artifacts that cantrip, a lot of artifacts that are cheap, and you can kind of do whatever else you want after that. So if you're blue-red artifact, then you have your Menon, and then you also have all the cheap artifacts, and then you can kind of do whatever else you want with the rest of your slots. But when I say this is a puzzle set, I mean if you're blue-red artifacts, your deck doesn't work without Menon, without a way to generate value from each artifact you play. If you have all of those, if you have the payoffs and the artifacts, then it's going to be an 8. Otherwise, it's still a fine body that I'm pretty happy to play, even with just a few artifacts. It's closer to this 4 of 4. Overall, it's going to average out as a 6 with a floor of 4, ceiling of 8, and medium effort most of the time. Yes, Beard Broken, a lot of the LCI mechanics are represented here, in part because LCI had a lot of tap 2 things or whenever an artifact enters, but it's just replaced with Station. LCI is also a very good comparison. Like everyone else, Lost Caverns of Ixalan is a set we will be comparing this to in a few places because there's a lot of overlap, which is also good for the standard format. Yeah. Right, there are artifacts that make an artifact. Really good point, Carl. There's a lot of cards that, when this artifact enters, make an artifact creature. Make a drone 1/1 flying that can't block creatures, that can only block creatures with flying. Make a robot 2/2 artifact creature. Make a lander. Go get a land. I really like landers, by the way. Sammy, Ship's Engineer. So I did give this one a revisit. 2 mana, red, 2 red white for a 2/4 legendary creature human artificer. At the beginning of your end step, if you control 2 or more untapped creatures, create a tap 2/2 robot artifact creature token. It is just not hard to have 2 creatures in play. So if something's gone wrong, if you cast this on turn 4 and can't make a robot with it, and then it snowballs. So the first robot you makes it really easy to make the second robot and the third robot and the fourth robot. This is a must kill. If your opponent casts this and then makes 2 robots with it, you have probably lost. There's a lot of good removal that kills it, but still. And then at 4 toughness means that it survives a lot of the removal spells in this format. So red-white is space stations. You station your spacecrafts by tapping creatures, then reap the rewards of your dedicated crew. So red-white is a little bit strange in this set because you will lay out, like, you have some options. There's so much to do with a huge number of bodies in this format. One of those is pump the team. There's the anthems, the ways you have to make all of your creatures larger are incredibly strong in this set. But all stations are also an inherent thing to do with a clogged board. Every single spacecraft is something to do with a lot of bodies. And this doesn't make a 1/1 body that doesn't do anything unless you can make it larger. It's a 2/2 body that is also an artifact. So like, you can splash this with Menon, and you'll have a free way to make an artifact every turn where you'll already be sitting back and building value. Sammy is very strong, really good in the red-white deck. Not really an aggro card. This isn't something you play in your most aggressive decks. This is something you play in your mid-range decks or decks that you don't mind getting to a stalled-out boards position. Yes, splashing green is good. This is a really cool card. I love it. This is why I think stations are cool and interesting rather than being unplayable. You can make, like, stations are what you snowball into. When you're a deck that your resources snowball and make more and more resources, then spacecraft are how you end the game, or anthems. But overall, I gave Sammy a 6 with a floor of 4. That's if you're not really utilizing the bodies, if you're just trying to get value out of it at maybe a little bit of a risk. And a ceiling of 7, and it's usually going to be playing closer to that ceiling of 7 because of the low effort. 6, 4, 7 low. So Beard says he'd be happy if I get to attack with Lad successfully and then play a Sammy and makes another Lad to punch with, but he doesn't expect to get to do that often. So just to take all of the comments together, I'm hoping you're realizing something that I'm really excited about, and it's that Vigilance is really good in this format. This is the best Vigilance has ever been. I don't think we've ever had a set more geared towards Vigilance being a relevant creature keyword. Like, I don't know, I think it's cool. It's just Vigilance has been so bad for so long except unless it's on your like big finishing creature. But like a 1/1 vigilance is a cool and relevant thing in this format. There's only a few creatures with vigilance, but I still wanted to point it out. Yeah, so Beard says, the thing that hurts the most about spacecraft is crewing means you're not threatening your opponent's life total. Like, it's a thing. It's a really interesting thing in this format. Like, the decisions you have to make every turn, even just through to your attacks, are fascinating. Green, black, just graveyard. I like that they didn't try and like graveyard big, graveyard artifacts, reanimation vehicles, just graveyards. Like, that's what green, black does. They recycle. Seed Ship Broodtender, a black and a green for a 2/3, already good enough. Insect Citizen, ETB, when it enters, mill 3 cards. And then 3 black, green, sacrifice this creature, return target creature or spacecraft from your graveyard to the battlefield. Activate only as a sorcery. This is a good enough card with no text. With text, this is one of the only 2 ways in the whole set to mill yourself. And a great reanimation spell. Like, this is a good blocker early. It's hard to deal with. It's better than what your opponent plays on turn 2 most of the time, or at the very least it blocks what your opponent plays on turn 2, and then later you cast it in for the biggest threat in your graveyard, which it already started to enable by milling yourself 3 cards. Very strong. We don't have to say too much about it. There is no, but we're going to talk about green black. So in green black, there's no card like what we've been seeing lately. There's no 8 mana spell that costs 1 less for each creature in your graveyard, or each artifact in your graveyard, or each creature in exile. It's just a few little ways to grind value or select cards like this. And in order to make up for that, in order to make up for the lack of real payoffs, the individual enablers and pieces are just stronger. Green black is mostly, it's very good, but it's mostly because good cards assemble so well in green black. Green black as an archetype doesn't really exist, and that's okay. Right, so Carl says green black looks like it's lacking synergy and identity. This is mostly true, but that's because of the cards. Like, I fully believe that they built out this whole archetype and it was too good. With archetypal synergies, green black would be too strong because the individual cards just at a vanilla level in green and black are so strong. A 2 mana 2/3 with value is usually something we'd see on a rare, not in an uncommon. I gave it a 7 with a floor of 5, ceiling of 7, medium effort. You want this to be card selection for you. Like, this goes back to a lot of what we're gonna find is emblematic of the set. Like, this doesn't actually generate value, right? Like, a lot of these powerful cards don't generate any value, but they'll generate size, or they'll generate something very specific for your deck. In this case, the specific thing it's generating is card selection. Not value, but the ability to find what you need, the ability to find your reach creature, or your life gain, or your spaceship that kills something when it comes into play. It also turns a lot of very bad cards into pretty good cards. There's really good things that you want to pick up. All right. Up next, Station Monitor. So blue-white second spell is probably the strongest archetype on its own. Like, without crazy payoffs, blue-white double spell is just really strong, because there are enough cheap spells, and overall blue is the most flexible color. White is stronger than you might think at first, but it is still a little bit weak. So Station Monitor is a white and a blue for a 2/2 Lizard Artificer. Whenever you cast your second spell each turn, create a 1/1 colorless drone artifact creature token with flying, and this token can block only creatures with flying. So overall, if you played Gremlin Tamer in Duskmourn, this is probably as strong as Gremlin Tamer in Duskmourn. Like, it is weaker than it a little because the Cree tokens aren't chump blockers forever, but they do fly and win the game eventually. And it's the set overall is weaker than Duskmourn. So very good. It's really easy to double spell because we're going to talk about this. It's much easier to double spell in this set than in other sets because of warp. all of your warp spells are worth 2 spells. So if you have 2 cards in hand with warp, then you get to double spell twice. Like, you can't warp a spell twice in the same turn, but you can warp it and then cast a second spell next turn. Blue-white as an archetype really wants instance, because this is a fine card if you can only activate it on your turn, but if you can activate Station Monitor on your turn and your opponent's turn, you will win the game so fast. 4/1/1 flyers is a bomb status card. For, like, we've known this since Lingering Souls. If a card can make 4/1/1 flyers, that will usually win the game. And there are a lot of sweepers in this set, so that affects things a bit. But if you can think of it as, I want to make 4 flyers with my Station Monitor, you'll win the game. One of the reasons that blue-white second spell works so well is you get to fill your deck with all cheap cards. Like, you can play a very powerful late game with only 1, 2, 3, and 3 mana spells because of cards like Station Monitor. On turn 4, you just play Station Monitor in a different 2-drop. Then you get on your opponent's turn, you get to draw a card, counter a spell, make one flyer. You'll win the game pretty quick. So I gave Station Monitor a 6 with a floor of 5, ceiling of 8, and medium effort. You do want to build around it, but it's very good. Like, in the blue-white twin spell deck, if you are building to be the pure twin spell deck and you have 2 or 3 copies of this, it's an 8. All right, black-white go wide. We've never seen that before, and I'm kind of okay with it. So the twist on going wide in this set is twofold. First is there's a lot of ways to kill everything. Second is the ways you have to pump everything are absurdly good, like Servandum the Lucent. So 2 white, black for a 4/4 Death Touch lifelink, already good enough. Whenever it enters or attacks, other creatures you control get +1/+0 and gain Death Touch until end of turn. So the turn this comes down, it enables an attack even if they kill it right away. And if you get to attack with this, you'll probably win. Giving your whole team Death Touch means that your opponent has 0 profitable blocks. If you have only 1 other creature, this card is great. But if it's alone, it's still a 5. If you have no creatures in play when you cast this, it's still a 5 because it's a 4/4 with Death Touch and lifelink. So I gave it a floor of 5, ceiling of 7. That's if you have any number of other creatures in play, and low effort. So 7, 5, 7 low. Very strong. This is the first of 4 4 ridiculously powerful anthems and 1 okay anthem, which is only just okay because of the competition it has. Like, even if you're not, like, you can cast this in Station with this and anything else you want also. So Tannic Memorial Ensign, red-green is landers and landfall. Lands coming into play matter. Tannic is a 1 red-green 2/4 with landfall. Whenever a land you control enters, it deals 1 damage to each opponent. If it's the second time this ability is resolved this turn, draw a card. So you do have to put some work into enabling it. If you have the landers, if you have the ways to get additional lands, then it's going to do a lot of work for you. If it draws 1 card, you're happy. That's just not a free thing. But on turn 5, you can cast this spell, play a land, ping your opponent, or on turn 5, 3 mana for the Tannic, land, ping, crack a lander, and then it's 5 mana for a 2/4, deal 2 damage to your opponent, draw a card. It's very good. But it's a little bit weaker than otherwise. I love that it's a Kavu. I missed Kavu. My first set was Invasion with Kavu. I love them, and I like coming back and seeing them in space. Gives me Mass Effect 2 Shadow Broker DLC vibes, if you are familiar with that very specific pool. But yeah, I gave it a 6 with a floor of 5, ceiling of 7, medium effort. It's not hugely, like, if you just play this as a 2/4 that pings occasionally, it's okay, you'll manage. You really do want to have landers in your deck for this card to be good. If you can't break, like, it's a binary thing. If you can't break a lander with Tannic in play, this is a 5. If you can break even 1 lander with it, then it's a 7. Very cool. Okay, so for the artifacts, one important thing to note about the artifacts in this set is that they are good. So specifically colorless, I should say colorless. They're very good in general. Like, all of the colorless artifacts in this set are at least playable, if not great. And most of them have a specific place where they shine. So what does this mean for Edge of Eternities? It means your sealed deck is going to get to be 2 colors more often. It means that your draft deck can be monocolored because you're just at a much lower risk of having dead cards. There's not that many of them either. There's only a few colorless cards, and it's very cool. All right, so All Fate Scroll, really cool card. There are only 3 sources of colorless fixing in this whole set. Absurd, it's just really low. And this is a really cool one. So we see mana rocks all the time, and the difference between a good mana rock and a bad mana rock in draft is always going to be I should say manolith. A good manolith and a bad manolith in draft is always going to be, how devastating is this if I draw it late game? Like, is this a huge problem if I run it in place of a land or in addition to a land? If this is my 18th mana source, am I going to flood because of this card? And not with the All Fate Scroll. Like, All Fate Scroll is a manolith that you can draw cards. Like, if this is 7 mana sacrifice, draw 2, it doesn't feel great, but it's still better than a land. And if it's 7 mana, draw 4 or 5 or 6 cards, then it's going to be great. And most of the reason the effort value is high is that most of the additional, well, there's only 1 non-basic land, head common or uncommon, but there's a ton of rare ones and a whole bonus sheet. Well, it's like 1 in 8 packs, 1 in 4 packs. So you can have enough different land names to make this generate a lot of value. So I gave it a 5 average with a floor of 4, a ceiling of 7, and high effort, 1 in 8 packs. So that means 3 per draft, plus the rare slot. So if you have 3, 4, 5 differently named lands in your deck, this card is going to be really good for you. But you don't want to have to run a swamp in your red-green deck to make All Fate Scroll good. It enables a splash and it benefits from a splash. Really cool card. Happy to play with it. 5, 4, 7 high. Bygone Colossus. 9 mana, 9/9 vanilla robot giant, but it has warp 3. Really cool card. Earlier when I said a lot of stations you don't get to play unless you can cheat. This is how you cheat your station. So you can warp this for 3 and immediately crew any station. I haven't seen all the rare stations, but you can immediately station any spaceship at common or uncommon with this card. So a good way to look at this, you might not ever get to 9 mana, but 3 mana station target spacecraft is good. It's not great, but it's good. It's also cool because it works with a lot of these. Like, you can warp this in and station there's a reanimation station, right? Like, this goes in the reanimation station deck. I think this card's really cool. I don't think it's like one of the hallmarks of a good set is being able to put the bad cards together to make a good deck. So the bad station, like, stations are weak enough that if you want to do a dedicated station deck, you'll get the stations. You'll get stations last pick often, and you can make it work with cards like Bygone Colossus. So Ranger says that there are rares at 10 plus, especially lands. That's good to know. Thank you. But station 9 is awesome. Like, 3 mana station something 9 is going to be worth a card in a lot of situations, but you'll have to engineer those situations, so I gave it high effort. 3, 3, 6 high. Cool card. This is also, like, you can reanimate it, but be careful. It's huge, but that's it. Chrome Companion is a 2 mana 2/1. Whenever the artifact creature dog, whenever this creature becomes tapped, you gain 1 life. 2 tap, put target card from a graveyard on the bottom of its owner's library. I gave it a 4 with a floor of 4, ceiling of 5, and low effort. So this is what I mean when I say, like, every set has an artifact creature that feels bad when you have to play it, right? Sterling Silverhound and OTJ, the 3 mana 3/2 surveil 1, the 2 mana 2/1 surveil 1, the Monk's Fist in Final Fantasy, 2 mana make a 1/1 equip it. Like, yeah, they're gonna feel fine most of the time, but you're upset when you have to play them. Well, in this case, I'm not upset when I had to play the Chrome Companion. Whenever it stations or attacks, you gain a life. That's something we've seen be good enough on a 2 mana creature, and tucking a card is valuable. If you're milling you can mill yourself out, tuck your important spells, keep looping through. You can tuck your opponent's reanimation targets. It's very strong. Well, it's not very strong. It's much better than most cards in this design space. Ooh, Dauntless Scrapbot is up next. This is a 3-mana 3/1 robot. When it enters, exile each opponent's graveyard, create a lander token. To be clear, I would play this if it were a 3-mana 3/1 make a lander token in just about any color. Landers are good. This is 2 artifacts on 1 card. That artifact that it makes is worth a whole card. Exiling your opponent's graveyard isn't always going to be relevant, but when it's relevant, it's going to be very relevant. Every single color, well, green, black, white, blue. Green, black, white, and blue all have some way of interacting with their graveyard, some form of recursion. Not a lot to say. Like, I think this is worth taking over many colored cards. It's just strong. There's so little that punishes a 1 toughness creature in this set, and it replaces itself with the lander token. Very good. I gave it a 6 with a floor of 4, ceiling of 6, low effort. I'll play it in most decks. Nutrient Blocks. I went ahead and gave this one a revisit. Indestructible doesn't really matter. There's nothing, there's no like install artifact. There's no way to make this a 5/5 indestructible creature, or a 5/4 or anything like that. There might be a rare, but I haven't checked. Mostly this is a 1-mana artifact that hangs out in play, and later you get to gain 3 life and draw a card. You still get the card if you don't gain the 3 life, and there's enough things in this set that want you to sacrifice an artifact anyway that this is relevant text. Like, there are so many different cards. Like, this is a deck specific card. You really want this in red black or occasionally in blue red. I might end up raising this later, but overall this is just a really solid piece of filler that you are happy to have in most decks. You want it in your void decks or whenever you're sacrificing artifacts, and you want it when you want to cycle through your artifacts. This may end up coming up to a 5, but this is never going to feel terrible to run. 3-mana, gain 3 life, draw a card is almost good enough. It's not quite there. That's a 3. But if you're getting full value out of this, meaning you care about artifacts coming into play or leaving play, then it's going to be a 5. So I gave it a floor of 3, ceiling of 5, average 4, medium effort. Pinnacle Killship. 7-mana artifact spacecraft. When this spacecraft enters, it deals 10 damage to up to 1 target creature. You don't have to target your own. And then it has station. And at 7+ charge counters, it is a 7/7 with fly. So we usually see a 7 cost or a 6 cost or a 1 cost with 6 to activate cost. Kill a creature. Kill something. This is that one for this set. There's better removal. It's okay if this is the removal you have. It's okay if this is the finisher you have. Like, this is pretty flexible. So 7+ flying, it's a lot, but it already killed something, so it's not a huge deal. This is going to be one of your worst reanimation targets, one of your worst removal spells, one of your worst stations, one of your worst artifacts, one of your worst expensive finishers. But the fact that it can do all of that means you don't have to be embarrassed if you end up having to pick it up late for your deck. Cool card. I'm happy that it's here. Like, having a nice artifact removal spell for when your colors get surprise cut in pack 3 and you're short is nice. But I don't want to take it too highly. Final scores are 3, 2, 5, and high effort. Love this one. This is the first time in I think March of the Machine, so a year, was the last time we had an actual creature with real hexproof. This is a 4 Survey Mechan, 4 colorless for a 1/3 artifact creature robot, flying, hexproof, and 10 sacrifice this creature. It deals 3 damage to any target. Target player draws 3 cards and gains 3 life. This ability costs X less to activate, where X is the number of differently named lands you control. In an average deck, this will cost 7 mana. So this is a 4-mana 1/3 creature with flying. That's pretty good. Like, it stays there, it pings, you can grow it. Hexproof is really powerful just because you can safely target this with your bites and with your growth, and you can safely equip it with spells. Like, stat lines are not great. 4-mana 1/3 flyer is not great, but at 1 or 2 counters, it's going to start to feel pretty good. And the fact that you can just let it sit here and then later it'll usually cost you 7 mana to sacrifice it, but 7 mana, kill a thing, draw 3 cards, gain 3 life is worth it as a spell. And then if you have some rare lands, if you have a couple chalk lands or some of the station lands or an ancient tomb, then it gets a lot then it gets cheaper fast. Very strong card. I gave it a 5, floor of 3, ceiling of 7, medium effort. Really cool card. I'm happy to see Hexproof back. Like, you can suit it up like Voltron. You can use it in a control deck with your lands. You can use it as a finisher for your landed tokens. I love the card. And Wingspear just pointed out that it is instant speed, not sorcery speed. I'm gonna go ahead and raise this up to a 6 because I actually did think it was sorcery speed. I'm just so used to this effect being sorcery speed. Just the fact that you can sit on your opponent's turn and end step, reset your hand, kill a thing, gain 3. It's so good. Automaton Torpedo. This is the kind of removal spell we usually see. It is a 1 mana artifact with 6 sacrifices. Artifact, destroy target non-land permanent. That alone, and this ability costs 3 less to activate if you attack with a spacecraft this turn. So, we see this effect a lot, and usually where it's good, it's a 1 mana artifact, and then you only want that in a deck where you want artifacts in play, where you want to cycle through artifacts, play out as many as you can, and just have a certain number of in play, maybe for affinity, or because cards will put +1/+1 counters on other cards when artifacts come into play, and then later you can crack it. This is a reason to lean into spacecrafts. If you're a spacecraft deck, and you have all the ways to cheat their stationing requirements, being able to attack and kill anything for 3 or 4 mana spread out, is really nice. So, solid removal spell. 7 mana kill a thing is bad, but sometimes you'll need an artifact and then it'll be a 3 or a 4. Sometimes you'll actually be good at attacking with space stations. There are ways to be good at attacking with space stations, and then it's going to be a 5 for you. Cool card. If I have to take this as my removal spells, I'm not going to be too upset. It's a good question, Wingspear, and if I build my deck around attacking with a spacecraft, then I can reliably attack with a spacecraft on turn 5 or turn 6. If I don't build my deck around attacking with a spacecraft, then I can attack with a spacecraft usually on turn 8 or 9, like it's a really late game thing. If you're not built to attack with spacecraft and you need it to happen because of a stalled board state, it's a very late game thing. But you can make it happen fast. Virulent Silencer. This is a 3-cost 2/3 artifact creature robot assassin. Whenever a non-token artifact creature you control deals combat damage to a player, that player gets 2 poison counters. So this is the only source of poison counters in the whole set. There's no proliferate or anything. However, there is a deck for this. So I gave it a 3, floor of 3, ceiling of 6, high effort. Okay, Wingspear has just pointed out that it says non-token artifact creature, and I missed that. So we're gonna go ahead and lower this a little bit. I'm just lowering the floor. I'm still keeping the amount because there's still enough there's still enough flying artifacts. We're just dropping the floor and the ceiling, but I'm keeping the rating. So, revised Virulent Silencer says non-token. So 3, floor of 2, ceiling of 5, effort of high, and I am really sad. I was wishfully willing this card to be artifact creature. I was really excited. I thought they built this. Why would they put this in the set without drones? I wanted to kill someone with poison. Wormwall Sweeper. Here's another really cool one. It is a 2-mana artifact spacecraft. When this spacecraft enters Surveil 2 and Station, and at 4+ it has flying. So this is it's solid. Like, it's a, I'm gonna go ahead and raise this because I read more of this cards that need stations. So this is a good way to attack early. 4 is a very low station cost. It means you have to tap 1 creature later or 2 creatures early. And if this is a 2-mana 2/2 flyer for you that surveils 2, it's great. It's a 5. And if it's a 2-mana 2/2 later that's surveilled now, then it's okay. It's a 3. So it's usually, I gave it a 4 with a floor of 3, ceiling of 5, and medium effort. Okay. And then finally, for our colorless cards, we have Command Bridge. Command Bridge says this land enters tap. It is a land. When this land enters, sacrifice it unless you tap an untapped permanent you control. and it taps for 1 mana of any color. So it can be another land that you tap, which feels pretty bad, or it can be a creature, which feels pretty bad, or it can be a lander you can't use, or an artifact that you have lying around, which will feel pretty good. This has relevance because it is a land with a different name. So I wouldn't usually ever play the second copy unless I really needed to splash something. And if I really need to splash something, it's usually going to be something expensive enough that I would rather have landers. If I don't have landers or good colorless fixing, then I'll play a copy of this. And if I have any number of these artifacts or green cards, like All Fates Scroll, that say number of differently named lands you control, then I want 1 copy of this. But you never want to play the second copy if you can help it at all, because having, like, if you mulligan, or if you have a 7-card hand with 2 copies of Command Bridge and you can't play either of them, then you can't keep that 2-lander. And even with 3 lands, it means that you have a tap land for 3 turns, and it's way worse than a tap land. So never play the second copy unless something very bad has happened. Often the first copy will feel okay, but only if your curve is relatively low, and only if you have a need for a different land. So there's no Evolving Wilds or Terramorphic Expanse or Edgewall in or equivalent in this set, which is one of the reasons that you would need to be on 1 or 2 colors. I gave this a 3 with a floor of 2, ceiling of 5, medium effort.